Racist hotel staff kick out black customer unaware he's the owner inspecting them. Michael Walker, a successful entrepreneur, decides to visit one of his luxurious hotels undercover. What he encounters is shocking. Staff members mistreating him based on assumptions about his appearance, unaware that he is the owner. Stay tuned for this eye-opening story of prejudice, justice, and transformation. Date, October 3, 2023. Location, the Grand Lux Hotel, Atlanta, Georgia. Michael Walker, a successful black entrepreneur and owner of the Grand Lux Hotel chain, stood quietly at the entrance of his flagship property. Today, he decided to step out of his office and witness firsthand how his staff treated guests. Dressed in jeans and a simple jacket, he blended into the background, a stark contrast to the luxury that surrounded him. As Michael entered the lobby, the marble floors sparkled and the chandeliers glimmered under the bright lights. Everything appeared pristine, but Michael knew that appearances could be deceiving. He approached the front desk where a young receptionist named Tom was engrossed in his phone. After a moment, Tom looked up, annoyance flashing across his face as he took in Michael's attire. As we reflect on this powerful story, let's remember that standing together against racism is essential. If you support equality, comment 77. If you believe in division, comment 55. Let's unite, share your thoughts and your identity to promote understanding and solidarity. Can I help you? Tom asked, his tone dismissive. Hi, I'd like to check in for my reservation, Michael replied, keeping his voice steady. Tom barely glanced at the computer. Sorry, all rooms are booked, he said, turning his back. Feeling a wave of frustration, Michael persisted. Could you check again, please? I made a reservation. With an exaggerated sigh, Tom reluctantly began tapping on the keyboard. Nearby, Anna, another staff member, whispered to Tom, Maybe we should just kick him out. He doesn't belong here. Michael's heart sank. The casual cruelty of their comments cut deeper than he anticipated. He realized this was about more than just his attire. It was about their perceptions of him. Just then, Carlos, a veteran bellhop, overheard the conversation. Unlike his colleagues, he had spent years witnessing the subtle and not-so-subtle racism that pervaded the hotel. He stepped forward, sensing the tension. Hey, Tom, maybe you should treat all guests with respect regardless of how they look, he suggested cautiously. Tom shot him a glare. Mind your own business, Carlos. The air crackled with unspoken tensions as Michael remained calm. He wanted to see how far this would go. As the interaction unfolded, he noticed a group of guests, a family of 4, white and well-dressed, check in smoothly while he was met with hostility. Can you please call a manager? Michael asked, maintaining his composure. Tom rolled his eyes again, clearly irritated. We don't have time for this, just leave. As the argument escalated, security was called. 2 imposing guards arrived and without hesitation, one of them approached Michael. Sir, you need to leave, he commanded, devoid of any understanding or inquiry into the situation. Feeling a surge of indignation, Michael replied, I have every right to be here. I'm not going anywhere. The guard frowned. If you don't leave voluntarily, we will have to use force. In that moment, Michael felt a familiar fury rise within him. This wasn't just about him. It was a symbol of the systemic racism that infected the hotel and, by extension, society. You don't know who you're dealing with, he said slowly, pulling out his wallet and revealing his ID. Gas filled the lobby as his identity was revealed. He was not just any guest, he was the owner. Michael Walker, the man they had judged solely on his appearance, now stood before them with undeniable authority. Tom's face drained of color while Anna stammered, This must be a joke. Tom's face drained of color while Anna stammered, This must be a joke. No joke, Michael replied, his voice steady and powerful. You just tried to throw out the owner of this establishment because of your bias. You didn't even bother to check my reservation. All you saw was my skin color. As the weight of his words sank in, the lobby fell silent. The other guests, now witnessing the confrontation, began to murmur among themselves, their eyes wide in disbelief. Carlos stepped forward, his voice firm. "This is why we need to change the way we operate here. This is unacceptable." The security guards exchanged glances, uncertain of their next move. Michael continued, "You've demonstrated a fundamental failure in treating guests with respect. This isn't just a personal insult. It reflects on all of us." Tom, now visibly shaken, attempted to speak but failed. The reality of his actions crashed down upon him and he stuttered. "I didn't know. I didn't mean exactly," Michael cut in. "You didn't think. You didn't see me as a person, just a stereotype. This has to change." Just then, Rachel, the hotel's general manager, rushed into the lobby, alarmed by the commotion. Upon seeing Michael, her eyes widened. "Michael, what's happening? Your staff just tried to expel me from my own hotel," he said, disappointment flooding his voice. Rachel's gaze shifted to Tom and Anna, her expression darkening. "What's your explanation for this?" As Tom fumbled for words, Michael took the opportunity to speak. "This isn't just about today. It's about the culture of this hotel. You need to implement real training on diversity and inclusivity. No one should face this kind of treatment, especially not in their own establishment." Rachel nodded, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "You're absolutely right, Michael. I'll ensure that we take immediate action." However, as the tension began to subside, another character entered the scene. Leonard, the hotel's head chef. A middle-aged man with a reputation for his culinary brilliance, Leonard had also developed a strong bond with the staff, often overlooking their biases due to their shared work environment. But he had overheard the confrontation and sensed the brewing storm. "Wait, if you support racism, comment 55. If you stand against it, comment 77. Also, let us know if you're black or white to show our unity for equality." "Michael," he interjected, "I know many of us here have made mistakes, but we're all a product of our upbringing. It's not easy to change overnight." "Then it's time to start changing," Michael replied, his voice firm. "Ignoring the issue only perpetuates the cycle. This hotel can be a leader in fostering inclusivity, but that requires work from everyone, including you, Leonard." Leonard nodded, acknowledging the truth in Michael's words. "I'll do my part," he promised. As the atmosphere shifted, Michael took a deep breath, feeling a mix of hope and determination. He wanted this moment to catalyze change, not just for himself, but for every employee and guest who had been marginalized. But the situation took another turn when Kelly, a junior server, piped up, her voice trembling. "I've been here for 3 years and I've seen the way some of us treat guests. I've wanted to speak up, but I was scared." "Scared of what?" Tom shot back, defensive. "You think I'm the problem?" "Yes," Kelly exclaimed, her courage bolstered by the unfolding events. "You and Anna both treat black guests differently. I've seen it time and again. It's not just you. It's the whole culture here." The room went silent as the weight of her words sank in. Tom's face flushed and Anna looked away, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The truth hung heavy in the air, an accusation that couldn't be ignored. "Maybe it's time for everyone to take a hard look in the mirror," Michael suggested. "Each of you has the power to change. You can choose to support a culture of respect or continue to uphold the biases that have hurt so many." Rachel, visibly moved by the conversation, added, "We will hold mandatory sensitivity training starting next week. This is unacceptable, and we must all do better." As the meeting concluded, Tom, Anna, and the security guards were left standing together, the weight of their actions pressing down on them. They had seen their prejudices laid bare and felt the heavy burden of accountability. But outside the hotel, a new plot twist was unfolding. A group of activists had gathered, including Michelle, a fierce community leader. Known for her work against systemic racism, she had been monitoring the hotel's practices for years, aware of the biases in their hiring and service. Hearing about the confrontation via social media, she arrived to support Michael. "Michael," she called, rushing up to him. "I heard what happened. This is an opportunity for change, not just for this hotel, but for the entire community." "Exactly," Michael replied, gratitude and determination shining in his eyes. "We can't let this moment pass. It's time for a broader dialogue about racism and hospitality and beyond. Together, they devised a plan to hold a town hall meeting in the hotel's grand ballroom, inviting employees, guests, and community members to engage in discussions about bias, inclusivity, and respect. Michelle reached out to local news outlets, ensuring that the event would receive the coverage it deserved. As the days passed, tensions grew within the hotel staff. Tom and Anna were particularly nervous about the upcoming meeting, fearing the scrutiny of their actions. Leonard, who had always been their ally, began to hold them accountable, challenging their biases in the kitchen and urging them to reflect on their behavior. "Think about how you'd feel if you were treated that way," he urged them during a staff meeting. "This isn't just about rules, it's about humanity." Meanwhile, Michael and Michelle met with community leaders discussing ways to create sustainable change. They planned workshops focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion that would not only involve the hotel staff, but also educate the local community on the importance of understanding and empathy. As the town hall approached, tension hung in the air. Michael was nervous but resolved, understanding the significance of this moment. He wanted his hotel to serve as a model for others in the industry, a place where everyone, regardless of their background, would feel welcome and valued. On the day of the town hall, the grand ballroom buzzed with anticipation. Attendees filled the space, including staff members, community members, and media representatives. Michael stood at the podium looking out at the diverse crowd before him. He felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady. "What happened to me last week was not just an isolated incident. It's a reflection of the biases that many people face every day. It's time for us to confront these issues head-on and work towards change together." As he spoke, the energy in the room shifted. People nodded in agreement and a sense of camaraderie began to build. The panel included Michelle, Carlos, and Rachel, each sharing their experiences and thoughts on how to move forward. Tom and Anna sat in the back, feeling the weight of their earlier actions. When it was time for questions from the audience, a young black woman stood up. "Why did it take this long for us to have this conversation?" she asked, her voice filled with emotion. "How many more people have to be treated this way before something changes?" Michael nodded, recognizing the urgency in her question. "You're right. We should have been having these conversations long ago. Change requires courage, and it starts with all of us acknowledging our biases and committing to do better." As the discussions continued, Tom felt compelled to speak. "I want to apologize for my actions. I was wrong. I didn't see Michael as a person. I saw my own prejudices. I want to change, and I hope to learn from this experience." The room erupted in applause, and Anna followed suit, expressing her own remorse. It was a turning point for them both, a moment of vulnerability that opened the door for genuine dialogue. As the town hall concluded, Michael felt a sense of hope. They had initiated a process of healing and accountability, but he knew this was just the beginning. The real work lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, the hotel implemented the changes discussed during the town hall. Diversity training became a regular part of employee orientation, and community workshops were organized to foster understanding and empathy. Michael was determined to ensure that the Grand Lux Hotel would be a place of welcome for everyone, a safe haven for all who walked through its doors. As the hotel's reputation began to shift, Michael found himself not just leading a successful business, but also becoming a community leader, using his platform to advocate for racial equality. He organized events that celebrated the rich diversity of Atlanta, inviting local artists, musicians, and speakers to share their stories. However, not everyone was pleased with the changes. Some staff members resisted, clinging to outdated notions of superiority and entitlement. They whispered behind closed doors, sowing seeds of discontent, feeling threatened by the inclusivity Michael was championing. One evening, as Michael reviewed plans for an upcoming community festival, he received a call from Michelle. "We need to talk," she said, her tone serious. "What's going on?" Michael asked, concern creeping into his voice. "There's a faction of staff who are unhappy with the direction you're taking the hotel," she explained. "They're organizing against you, trying to undermine the changes you've implemented." Michael's heart sank. I knew some would resist, but I didn't realize it had escalated to this level. "We have to address it before it becomes a larger issue," was Michelle advised. "We can't let fear and ignorance derail the progress we've made." Determined not to let negativity overshadow their efforts, Michael called for another staff meeting. This time, he wanted to directly address the concerns and fears of the employees who were resistant to change. As the meeting unfolded, tension was palpable. Michael stood before the group, feeling the weight of his responsibility. "I know that some of you are uncomfortable with the changes happening here, but I want to assure you that this is about creating a better environment for everyone, guests and staff alike." A hand shot up from the back of the room. It was Tom. "But why do we have to change? Things were fine before, were they?" Michael challenged, looking directly at him. "How many people felt unwelcome? How many people didn't speak up because they feared being ridiculed or dismissed? This isn't just about comfort. It's about creating a culture of respect and inclusion." Anna chimed in, her voice quaking slightly. "I didn't realize how harmful my actions were until I saw the consequences. I want to be better, and I hope we can all work together to change." The atmosphere in the room shifted as employees began to share their experiences. Some openly admitted to their biases, while others expressed their fear of losing their jobs or being judged. The honesty was refreshing, but it was also painful. As the meeting continued, Michael emphasized the importance of accountability. Change is hard, but it's necessary. We all have to be willing to reflect on our actions and grow together. By the end of the meeting, the staff felt a mix of uncertainty and hope. While some remained resistant, many others were beginning to understand the necessity of change. The seeds of dialogue had been planted, but it would take time for them to blossom. In the following weeks, Michael and Michelle worked tirelessly to cultivate a new culture at the hotel. They invited speakers from various backgrounds to share their stories and held workshops focusing on empathy and understanding. Slowly but surely, a shift began to take place among the staff. Meanwhile, the faction resisting change grew more vocal. They began to rally support from a few longtime employees who had benefited from the hotel's previous culture of exclusion. Rumors spread, and Michael became aware that some were actively trying to undermine his leadership, sowing distrust among the staff. One day during a team lunch, a group of employees began whispering about Michael's leadership and the changes they were implementing. They claimed he was prioritizing diversity over quality service, suggesting that they were losing valued customers due to the new focus on inclusivity. Carlos, who had been part of the original town hall, overheard the conversation and felt compelled to speak up. "This hotel has always catered to a specific type of clientele. We can't ignore the fact that there are many voices we've left out. We need to do better." A woman named Sarah, a longtime server, countered, "But at what cost? Are we really going to sacrifice the quality of our service just to accommodate everyone?" Michael, who had been nearby, stepped forward. "This isn't about sacrificing quality. It's about expanding our definition of quality. It's about ensuring that everyone feels welcome, not just a select few." Tension escalated and voices grew louder. The divide within the staff was becoming more pronounced, and Michael realized he needed to take decisive action before the rift widened further. That evening, he convened an emergency meeting with Rachel and Michelle. "We need to address this division head-on," he said, determination in his voice. "We can't let fear and ignorance undermine what we've worked so hard for." "Perhaps we should hold another town hall," Michelle suggested. "But this time we need to focus on healing and building bridges between the divided factions." "I agree," Rachel added. "It's crucial for everyone to feel heard. We can't move forward if we're not united." The next town hall was scheduled, and this time Michael aimed to create an open forum for dialogue. He wanted everyone to express their concerns, fears, and hopes. It was time for healing and understanding. As the town hall approached, Michael felt a mix of anxiety and hope. He understood that healing wouldn't come easily, but he was committed to fostering an environment where everyone felt safe to share their experiences. On the day of the meeting, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Employees filled the room, some eager to engage while others remained skeptical. Michael stood at the front, feeling the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "I know there are many feelings and opinions in this room, and I want to create a safe space for everyone to share. This isn't about blame. It's about understanding and moving forward together." One by one, employees began to speak up. Some shared their experiences of feeling unwelcome in the past, while others voiced their fears about losing their jobs or feeling like they didn't belong. The tension in the room began to dissolve as the stories unfolded. When Tom finally stood up, he took a deep breath. "I realize now how my actions contributed to a culture of exclusion. I'm sorry for how I treated Michael and others like him. I didn't see the bigger picture." The room fell silent as others nodded in agreement, acknowledging the need for change. Slowly, Anna also stood up, her voice trembling. "I want to do better too. I've been part of the problem, and I want to be part of the solution." The atmosphere shifted, and as the dialogue continued, employees began to express their concerns and fears. Michael encouraged open communication, facilitating discussions that allowed everyone to share their thoughts. As the meeting wrapped up, a sense of unity began to form. Employees expressed a desire to work together to create a more inclusive environment, recognizing that their individual actions contribute to a collective change. Weeks passed and the hotel slowly began to transform. The staff worked together to implement new policies focused on inclusivity and respect. They organized community events that celebrated diversity, showcasing the talents and stories of underrepresented voices. As the Grand Lux Hotel became a model for inclusivity, the community began to take notice. Michael received invitations to speak at local events, sharing his journey and the lessons learned along the way. His story inspired others to reflect on their own biases and consider how they could contribute to change. However, not everyone was on board with the transformation. The faction that had resisted change continued to spread dissent, fueling a narrative that claimed the hotel had lost its original charm. They organized protests, demanding a return to the old ways and undermining the progress made. One evening, as Michael was preparing for an upcoming community event, he received a call from Rachel. "Michael, we need to talk. The protests are gaining momentum, and it's starting to affect morale among the staff." Michael's heart sank. He knew that resistance was part of the journey, but he hadn't anticipated it would escalate to this level. "What can we do?" he asked, feeling the weight of responsibility. "We need to address the protests head-on," Rachel suggested. "We can't ignore the dissent. We need to listen to their concerns while reinforcing our commitment to inclusivity." The next day, Michael called for another meeting with staff. He wanted to create a forum where employees could voice their concerns about the protests and express their thoughts on the hotel's direction. He understood that open communication was key to moving forward. As employees gathered, the atmosphere was tense. Many were concerned about the future of the hotel and the impact the protests might have on their jobs. Michael stood at the front, ready to face the challenges ahead. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," he began, his voice steady. "I know there are many feelings and opinions in this room regarding the protests. I want to create a space for open dialogue so we can address these concerns together." One employee, a young man named David, stood up. "I'm worried about the future of this hotel. Are we really willing to sacrifice our reputation for the sake of inclusivity?" Michael nodded, acknowledging David's concern. "It's important to consider our reputation, but we also need to recognize that inclusivity can enhance our reputation. A diverse and welcoming environment can attract more guests and create a better experience for everyone." Another employee chimed in, "But what about the guests who feel alienated by these changes? Are we losing our core clientele?" "I understand that concern," Michael replied, "but we have to remember that hospitality means welcoming everyone. By embracing diversity, we can create a more enriching experience for all our guests. This is about evolving and adapting to the needs of our community. As the dialogue continued, Michael encouraged employees to share their experiences and thoughts about the protests. Some spoke of feeling torn between the hotel's commitment to change and their loyalty to colleagues who resisted. Carlos, who had become a strong advocate for inclusivity, stood up. "We can't let fear control us. This hotel has the potential to be a leader in the industry. We need to show that we're willing to stand for what's right, even in the face of opposition." The discussion opened the door for honest dialogue about the challenges ahead. Michael emphasized the importance of unity and the need to support each other as they navigated the complexities of change. As the meeting concluded, Michael felt a renewed sense of determination. He knew that the path forward wouldn't be easy, but he was committed to fostering a culture of inclusivity within the Grand Lux Hotel. Days turned into weeks, and the protests continued, but the hotel staff remained resolute in their commitment to inclusivity. They organized community events that showcased the diversity of their clientele and invited local artists to share their stories through art and music. However, as the protests gained momentum, they began to attract negative attention from the media. Reports of dissent among the staff painted a picture of a divided hotel, and Michael felt the pressure mounting. One evening, he received a call from a prominent news outlet requesting an interview. They wanted to hear his perspective on the protests and the changes taking place within the hotel. Michael knew this was an opportunity to address the issues head-on and share his vision for the future. During the interview, Michael spoke candidly about the challenges they had faced, acknowledging the resistance from some staff members. "Change is difficult, but it's necessary," he said. "At the Grand Lux Hotel, we are committed to creating an inclusive environment where everyone feels welcome. It's about more than just policy. It's about building a culture of respect and understanding." As the interview aired, it sparked a heated debate within the community. Supporters praised Michael for his courage and commitment to inclusivity, while detractors continued to voice their concerns about the hotel's direction. In the midst of the turmoil, Michael received a letter from a group of former employees who had left the hotel due to its previous culture of exclusion. They expressed their support for the changes and offered to share their stories at an upcoming community event. Feeling a surge of hope, Michael invited them to speak at the hotel's next community gathering. He wanted to highlight the importance of listening to those who had been marginalized, and to emphasize that change was not just necessary, but also transformative. As the event approached, Michael worked closely with Michelle to ensure that the gathering would be a platform for open dialogue. They wanted to create an environment where everyone felt comfortable sharing their experiences and ideas. On the day of the event, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Attendees filled the grand ballroom, eager to hear the stories of those who had faced discrimination and exclusion. Michael stood at the podium ready to introduce the speakers. "Thank you all for joining us today," he began. "We're here to listen, learn, and grow together. It's essential that we acknowledge the voices of those who have felt marginalized and ensure that their experiences shape our journey moving forward." As the former employees shared their stories, the room fell silent. They spoke of the pain of exclusion, the struggle for acceptance, and the hope that change would come. Their vulnerability resonated deeply, and many attendees were moved to tears. In that moment, Michael realized that healing was possible. The hotel was beginning to transform not just in policies, but in the hearts and minds of those who worked there. People were beginning to understand the importance of empathy and connection. As the event concluded, attendees expressed gratitude for the opportunity to hear these powerful stories. The atmosphere shifted, and a renewed sense of purpose began to take root. In the weeks that followed, the hotel saw a surge in community support. Guests began to share their positive experiences, highlighting the warm and welcoming atmosphere that had emerged from the changes. The Grand Lux Hotel was no longer just a business. It had become a beacon of hope and inclusivity, However, the faction that had resisted change remained vocal. They continued to protest, organizing rallies and sharing their grievances on social media. But with each passing day, the momentum shifted in favor of those advocating for inclusivity. Michael recognized the importance of addressing the dissent head-on. He reached out to the leaders of the protests, inviting them to a meeting to discuss their concerns and explore common ground. The day of the meeting arrived and the atmosphere was tense. Michael sat at the table, flanked by Rachel and Michelle, ready to engage in a candid discussion. "Thank you for coming," Michael began. "I want to hear your concerns and understand your perspective. This is about creating a space for open dialogue." The leaders of the protests voiced their frustrations, expressing fears about the hotel's direction and the impact on their livelihoods. They felt that the changes were alienating loyal customers and risking the hotel's reputation. Michael listened intently, acknowledging their concerns. "I understand that change can be daunting, but it's essential to recognize that inclusivity can enhance our reputation. We want to create an environment where everyone feels welcome and valued." As the conversation unfolded, Michael encouraged the protesters to share their visions for the hotel's future. Slowly, common ground began to emerge. They discussed the possibility of collaborating on community events that would engage a diverse audience, while still honoring the hotel's traditions. By the end of the meeting, there was a sense of cautious optimism. While not everyone was convinced, there was a willingness to work together toward a shared vision. In the months that followed, the hotel continued to evolve. Collaboration between Michael and the protest leaders led to successful community events that showcased the diversity of Atlanta. The hotel became a gathering place for dialogue and understanding, where guests from all backgrounds could come together. Michael's commitment to inclusivity transformed not only the Grand Lux Hotel, but also the community. He became a sought-after speaker, sharing his story of resilience and the importance of addressing racism in the hospitality industry. Through the struggles and triumphs, Michael learned that change was an ongoing process. While the journey was fraught with challenges, it also held the promise of healing and connection. As the Grand Lux Hotel flourished, it became a symbol of hope, demonstrating that transformation was possible when people came together to confront their biases and work toward a shared vision of inclusivity. Years later, Michael stood in the lobby of the Grand Lux Hotel, now a thriving establishment known for its commitment to inclusivity and excellence. The walls were adorned with photographs of community events that celebrated diversity, showcasing the stories of those who had once been marginalized. As guests checked in, Michael couldn't help but smile. He had built not just a successful business, but a legacy of change. The hotel had become a haven for those seeking acceptance, a place where everyone could feel valued. But as he reflected on the journey, he knew that the fight against racism and bias was far from over. The world still faced challenges, and there was work to be done. However, he felt hopeful, knowing that change was possible when individuals chose to confront their biases and stand together for what was right. This story highlights the deep impact of prejudice and the importance of accountability. Michael's resilience and determination remind us that addressing biases requires courage and action. It's a call to treat everyone with respect and to challenge systemic injustice wherever we see it. Let's learn from this journey and work toward a more inclusive future. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories. See you in the next video.